Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we definitely have a very busy agenda and also a number of guests. So there is going to be an executive session at the end of this, and Tom Brennan is the and Crest are the discussion there. So, Tom, you are the very last item of business to allow it to go into executive session. Is that going to be okay?
Yeah, no problem. I'll go do some other stuff. Thanks, man.
Okay. Okay. Getting along with the things, we've got the. Actually, let's do the attendance. Vandana, do you want to run through the attendees?
Thanks, Andrew. So, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, part of the world. So, let's get to the attendance. I'll go by the name that I see on my screen. Grant.
Sorry, just looking for mute. Yes.
Jubin.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Avi.
Yes.
Glenn.
Yes.
Yes, from my side. Looks like Martin is yet to join.
Okay.
We also have a few people from the staff. We have Don, we have Andrew, we have Teresa, we have Tom Peppers, we have Kelly, Lisa, and we have a lot of guests joined in today. Thank you so much, guests, for joining us today. And I'm looking forward to all the discussions today. Now, before moving on to the agenda, I would like to take a vote on the previous board meeting minutes. So, hope everyone is okay with that. Any questions around it? Okay, I'll consider it as fine. So I'll go with the vote by the name that I see on my screen. Grant?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jubin?
Yes.
Avi?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
It's a yes from my side. Over to you, Andrew, to take the business forward.
Okay, okay. Thank you. This is our half year mark, and I just wanted to say we're doing very, very, very well. I will take you through some of the things that we're doing. I've just come back from 2 weeks of annual leave, and I'm still recovering, and I must apologise to Glenn. Glenn had a contract that he wanted me to sign last week, and I only got to it last night, and so I do apologise for the delays. If there's anything else that you guys are waiting from me, please get to me today, and I will prioritise that and get it done. I am getting through the backlog of my emails. Dawn very nicely sifted through my emails, but all the ones that remained were difficult, so and take more time than normal. So please do hassle me if you are waiting upon stuff from me. We have submitted our new bylaws to the lawyers for a draft review. I have not got that back yet. I was hoping to have a draft back by today that we could put towards the members. Policies, we have various mismatches in the various policies that disagree with each other and the new bylaws. So I am working through GitHub to create versions of those policies that have the very minor changes. We have a discussion item today. One of the guests today is Teresa Huff. We have actually an item specifically for this to go through fundraising and grant writing to work on a roadmap for those items. So Teresa is here as a guest. Operations, the WASP Awards were ended. There is some discussion that whether or not we go to a vote in the future years or whether or not the board just simply votes on who should win. But I still think the WASP Awards have value, but our participation rate was less than 10%. So that's something that you can discuss. Maybe we can put that onto the agenda for our face-to-face in November. I think that'll be a good conversation topic. The global board elections will start in August. There are 3 seats available. I believe it's Martin Jubin and Bill. And so if you wish to nominate yourself, please get going on the first available days. we know that at OWASP the elections are about who actually promotes themselves and gets out there and campaigns. If there's anybody else who wishes to run for the board, please do so. We do need to have diversity of opinions and diversity of locations and diversity of viewpoints. Black Hat USA and DEF CON is definitely on. We have booked our travel. We are going. And so I hope to see Vandana at Black Hat. And if anyone else is going, please let me know. So with that, I do have some just very brief slides. I just want to show you that we're working together. Tom, I will work with you on manually entering data. We've got this option now. It wasn't available to us before, so we can get back up to gold. Our monthly net income is doing very well. Tom will tell you all about that. I just wanted to show that we have increased our cash assets by 500k, which is fantastic, and we are doing 214k better than budget. In this case, many organizations will recast their budget, but I think because of the uncertainties of some of our larger expenses this year, in particular AppSec USA, I think we should just stick with our current budget, and if we overachieve, we overachieve. But at the moment, we're overachieving. And with that, Tom.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to grab the screen. So as Andrew mentioned, we are doing very well. When you look at our balance sheet, we're over $600,000 ahead of where we were at this time last year. AR is up, but that's because our team is out there selling sponsorships and memberships. You can see that, our prepaids are up, but that's because we're going to go to Dublin next February. So our total assets year over year at the end of June are up $671,000. Our payables are down a little bit. Our liabilities are up, but that's basically because we're now deferring corporate membership and recognizing it over the term of the actual memberships. And so, everything else is more or less in line to where it was. Our equity in the organization, in the US organization, is up 438,000 from this time last year. So with that, I'll stop and see if anybody has any questions, although I see Vandana's hand up.
I think I wanted to understand more around membership revenue and how many members do we have and what are we planning for the future?
Sorry.
Okay.
There's actually slides on that.
Okay.
But fundamentally, we do have a plan for a membership drive later this year. In the slides, we actually do have the number of members. It's gone down by about 42, but we've gained more lifetime members and complimentary members in that time. So in many ways, we're showing a greater, I don't know the correct word, but essentially the folks are really committing to OWASP, which is, $500 odd. In terms of revenue, Tom, do you have the breakout of the corporate versus individual income?
Yes, right here. So in the narrative, I break it out for you. So our budget for corporate was 268,000. We're 143,000 ahead of that. For individual, it's just under 139. Budget was 150, so we're about 11,000 under our budget, but more than being carried by our overage in the corporate. And it's been this way all year long. So as you can see going on with the revenue, our donations are under what we budgeted. Our events are ahead by almost 25,000. So in total, we're about $117,000 ahead. For expenses, we're way under budget. So the projects are about 119,000. Now, if you take the 90 out, because we had assumed a $100,000 grant and 90 of expenses, we're only about just about 30,000 under, which is fine. Events is right on. Chapters and outreach is under, primarily due to not spending what we put in the budget for, chapters, and the marketing's under by about 9. All other departments are about 29,000 under. So at this point, we're showing a positive $158,000 net income versus a budget of 53. And what's driving that is AppSec EU did well. It didn't quite make its numbers, but we're underspending, and we are driving a lot of revenue recognition from the corporate members. So we're about $59,000 more in cash than we had at the end of May. And that equates to a little over a year's worth of just operational reserve, and 8 months if we put in everything. If we didn't take in another dime and held all the events we were going to have in the budget, we'd still have 8 months of reserve. And again, the industry average is 6 months. So I'll stop there, and that's basically our finances in a nutshell for the first 6 months of the year.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, and
That's
I
okay,
apologize.
Jerry.
I couldn't find I didn't see the Excel sheet attached, and I apologize. I'm on vacation, so I didn't review it. But we have a bunch of bylaw reviews out for lawyers. Are the expenses for that amortized or accounted for in a line item? I must have missed it when you were sharing your screen.
So they'll be in the legal section. So right now, we've spent 28,000 for legal. We had a budget of 19, so it's a little over budget, but we're underspending by that much in the marketing. I think if I remember correctly, that was kind of the decision that was made.
Okay.
Earlier in the year.
Is that 27 is reflective of current spend or yet to be billed? Because we still have a bunch of stuff out for review by lawyers.
That's actuals.
Okay.
Yeah, so unfortunately, changing our bylaws is sort of non-optional. There are other items that sort of need to be done as well. Unfortunately, it's just an expense that it's basically legal debt that we have to pay.
Agreed. And I'm not sure if this is the right venue for asking this question, Andrew, so please feel free to punt. But do you have a rough estimate of what our legal liabilities are for this legal debt? That's a good way of phrasing it.
I'm expecting probably about another 10,000 for the bylaws. The reality is that we're getting they're going to have to review this 30-odd page document. That's not cheap. I would imagine that we're going to have some of our policies reviewed to make sure that they're legal. And lastly, we've got to have to refile our Delaware stuff, and I'm not sure how much that's going to cost. But generally, if you're starting a new company, I'm expecting $1,500 to $2,000 for the filing. Tom, is that what you'd expect?
Actually, we can probably do it for less than that if it's gonna be Delaware. I don't know if you can transfer, but I work with a company that for about $100 will either dissolve or incorporate in the state of Delaware. It's Incorp, who's our registered agent in Delaware anyways.
Okay.
So we would work with them. It's not that expensive to do that.
Okay. We did receive a lawyer note, which I'll work with Tom on. I don't think that's relevant to this discussion, but just in case it could solve both problems at once, I'm not sure.
Okay. And Andrew, we also had there were like 3 options of how we move forward with the bylaw changes.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 of the 3 options required potential legal protections and some representation if it went to court or hearings.
Yep.
Do we have accounting for that yet in the budget?
Realistically, we've got directors and officers insurance if it ends up going to court, like someone sues us over this issue. I'm hopeful that if we choose the best method that we've got available to us and we do it in good faith, I think, the chances are that D&O insurance will cover us. That's why we increased it a couple of years ago.
Got it. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, it covers you for anything other than negligence. So if somebody were to file a claim against the board, short of your negligence, which you're not in this case, you'd be covered. But what you're doing is changing your bylaws. So we should talk about that, Andrew, because I'm not sure you need 2 dissolve and reincorporate, there are mechanisms in Delaware to redo your bylaws.
Yeah. Avi?
Yeah, Tom, you said it covers everything except negligence. What
Yeah.
about hypothetical malicious behavior?
They'd have to prove it, but
But I assume
They
that
have
would
to
be
prove malice.
yeah, I
Malice.
mean, you'd have to prove malice, that you would, you
Okay.
were doing it on purpose to cause somebody harm.
Yeah.
Enough.
So Jubin, one last item. We don't have any money aside for the mediation that's coming up. I can't talk about that in public, but there's also no money in the budget for that. But we have to do it.
Okay, is that the executive session later? Is that regarding
No.
the meeting session?
No.
Got it. Different mediation. Okay,
Emails.
got it. Got it. Thank you.
I can brief you later if you want more details.
I think we were chatting about it yesterday. Is that right,
Yes.
Grant?
Yeah.
Yep. Got it. Yep. Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the finances? Okay.
Thank
As
you,
I,
everybody.
Thank you. Realistically, as I said before, many organisations in our position may want to consider rebudgeting, but I would encourage you not to do that. We don't have any face-to-face to go to decide on a new strategic direction or any strategic investments. We are trying our best to invest in our programs. In particular, we're investing in the Project Summit coming up in November. And so you'll see some announcements around that. So hopefully our underspending can be used profitably and usefully throughout this year. We do need to demonstrate program spending. So anyway, with that, our first item on the agenda is actually with Teresa Huff. Teresa is a grant writer and mentor. She's actually achieved many wonderful... Oh, sorry, Vandana, you had a question.
No, actually, you have not shared your screen, Andrew.
Oh, okay. Okay, no worries. That is a very good point. Where is it gone? Okay, so this is a grant and fundraising strategy item. This did go on between last week's officer prep call and now. So Teresa is a non-profit strategist and grant writing mentor. When I did the Skillshare training recently, Teresa actually created that content, and I realized just how far away we are from being able to access grants. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Teresa. She'll talk to you about the roadmap process. I believe this will actually help us tremendously in fundraising and grant writing in the future to obtain additional funds for our programs. So with that, I'd like to hand it over. Can someone give co-host to Teresa?
Thank you. Thank you for letting me sit in on your meeting and learn more about your organization. It's been fascinating to hear about the work you're doing. As Andrew mentioned, I have written grants for almost 2 decades, and now I am a grant strategist and grant writing coach as well. So I have shifted from trying to write all the grants myself and realized patterns and strategies along the way that have helped my clients be more successful. And I've been able to pinpoint those and identify which nonprofits have been more successful and why, and which patterns are the things that help them build their capacity and sustainability long term. So I have put that together into a roadmap process and taken those pieces that I feel like are the most essential in building a nonprofit, as opposed to let's fire off grants left and right and hope something sticks, but rather let's approach it more strategically. Let's pull in those elements that we know work, and let's help you build a framework for long-term success. You wouldn't just start building a house. You wouldn't just grab some boards and nails and let's build. You would take your time and evaluate the blueprints, the land, the foundation. You would get everything in place and then start building. So this is the same way. And this is why I like to approach the process more strategically. And I was glad that Andrew approached me wanting help with the strategy of it, because especially for an organization of your size and the impact that you're wanting to make, the strategic approach is going to be much more effective because of building relationships with funders long-term and building your reputation as an organization in the community and as an influence in the space. So if you can position yourself well with that kind of impact, then you'll be much more successful with grants long-term. And since I'm co-host, am I able to share my screen, I believe? Can you see my slide here?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just give you a quick overview of the funding roadmap and what it entails. I believe Andrew shared the proposal that I sent, but I thought I'd just walk you through the steps a little bit because you may have some questions. Some people like to look at the strategy, which is starting where you are now and how you want to go forward. And some people look at your vision and figure out where you want to be and work backwards. I like to take both into account because they're both important and they're both a critical piece of who you are and where you want to go and how you want to design your organization and your approach. So we need to look at both and take both parts into account throughout the process. The grant roadmap is important to lay the groundwork for funding. It's important to clarify because if you're not clear internally, you're conveying confusion, and funders and donors are not going to support something that is unclear and that they're confused about. So it's important to make sure everything is on the same page and clear about it. Then it gives you a framework for decision making, for identifying potential funders, partners, collaborators, affiliates in the community that you can work with. And it helps you identify what's not a good opportunity. So this framework is an important piece as well. It helps you be good stewards of your resources and make sure you are staying on track with your goals and where you want to be, that you're managing your money well. It's building your reputation. If you're able to manage small grants, you can manage larger grants. You're building your reputation among funders. Helps you serve with intention, which of course is your goal, ultimately to make an impact on your mission. And it just helps you maximize your effectiveness and your long-term impact of what you're building for leaving your legacy and your generational success. This isn't something you're just building for a 5-year thing. This is something you are creating and investing in for the future. And so it's important to keep that perspective as you're going through. So the roadmap process involves, first of all, looking at what do you have to work with. We take inventory, we dig deep, we go into all the ins and outs of your internal and external resources. What do you have? What's missing? What gaps are there that we need to make sure and fill in your foundation? If you just had a few blocks in your foundation of your house, it's not going to be a real steady house. You need to fill in and make sure it's solid and in place. Then the second piece, we look at your internal organization, because again, if you're not clear and have that framework internally, then your external communications and messaging and things you convey are not going to be as effective as they could be and as you want them to be. So we need to make sure those pieces are clearly aligned. Then we start building the framework, and this is where we'll be working together. And Andrew had mentioned that we had discussed doing some board training sessions to help you all understand internally that clarity, also understanding your role as a board and how you can be most effective in your role, and giving you the tools to do that. So we'll go through some training and activities and exercises with that. And then also we work together to develop a case for support. And if you're not familiar with that, that is an internal working document where we house everything. We keep all your messaging, your mission, vision, priorities, your background, a good, nice write-up of your history, your programs, all those pieces. And that is updated regularly, depending on when your statistics and information changes. And that way it gives you a central location for keeping all the information. It's something you can use to create other materials throughout your organization. You can use that for website copy, for brochures, for slides. And also the biggest piece is that's a lot of core wording that we can use in grant applications down the road. So this helps really clarify and give a home base to keep all that information. Plus, anyone across your team can pull from this case for support, and they're going to sound consistent, and they're going to know how to represent the organization well. You're not going to get mixed messages here and there because they're all pulling from that same core information that everyone has agreed, yes, this is who we are and what we're about. And then finally, the last phase of this roadmap process is to make sure you are equipped for your next steps, whatever that needs to be. And this will be based on some of the information that we uncover in the previous steps. But we will work together to make sure you have determined a good plan for the next stage and figure out, okay, now what are you ready for and what does this look like? So I'm not just going to leave you high and dry, like, okay, there you go, thanks. But we're going to make sure you have clear action steps and know roles and responsibilities and what that's going to look like for the next stage, whether it's stepping right into grants or if we need to do more of a building relationships with funders or identifying strategic partners within your team who can start learning grants, whatever that needs to look like, then we can determine from there a good solid plan for the next step. So the target outcomes of the roadmap process will be that you have a strategic framework, you have your core solidified and clear, and it reflects who you are and who you want to become as an organization. You also have the case for support that is your good internal wording, and it's that clear hub for your communications. And then we've identified the important elements of grant readiness for you and make sure you have those key pieces in place for your foundation. And if anything's missing, you know what you need to work on next to get that in place. That is the roadmap process in a nutshell. That's a very high level overview, but I don't want to take too much of your time. But I'm happy to answer questions if you have them. And you're welcome to reach out. I love connecting on LinkedIn with people, and feel free to I can go back over the slides, whatever we need to take a look at.
No worries. So the reason why I want to engage Teresa is very, very simple. There are some very big funders, such as the Craig Newmark Foundation, who's the co-founder of Craigslist, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They both have very, very significant funds available to our field. But the process of actually getting those grants is complicated, and we don't have even the basic stuff like a one-pager that describes our mission or anything like that. There's a lot of those missing elements, and I want to put our best foot forward. When we don't put our best foot forward, it's like what happened in 2020 when I went out and I reached out to the Linux Foundation, and let's just say that didn't work out. So what I would like to do is make sure that we have our ducks in a row. It's really important that there is this money that's available, but we need to say what we're going to do with it. And at the moment, I don't think we're there. So this is why we're doing this. And while we've got this additional money that we could either reforecast and use in different ways, but we can actually invest in our programs. And I think investing in fundraising and grant writing is actually a very good use of funds. I can let the board know in the executive session roughly how much this is, but it's just ever so slightly above my signing authority. Okay, so any other questions? Questions in general about fundraising and grant writing.
Are we planning to do it in different regions, or it's going to be just online? Like, how exactly we are planning to do this?
We have entities in the United States and the EU. I think that needs to be our first targets. Whether or not we can do things in the UK or Australia or other places, I am not sure. That's something that we would have to find out, and I think Teresa would have experience in those areas. Teresa?
I agree. I think we start with the core pieces, and from there you can determine what's the best way to branch out, or where are the most strategic areas that you want to target first. The way I like to approach grants, some people just say, hey, we've got this nonprofit. Let's start with the biggest federal grant we can find. Federal grants are complex. There's a lot of ins and outs to them, and it requires a ton of capacity and internal structure to do. So I don't recommend starting at the very top. It would be like if you were not a runner and you wanted to run a marathon. You can't do that next week. You've got to build up your stamina. You've got to practice every day for weeks to get there. So this is the same way. I recommend starting with a couple of smaller grants for a few reasons. One is to build your capacity and your credibility with funders. You're learning how the process works, and then you're getting some wins behind you. Then you can leverage those wins to go after bigger grants. And that's a common misconception. People think, oh, we don't want to tell funders that we have these other grants, or they might think we don't need theirs. But actually the opposite is true. If you think about a business and an investor, they're going to see that, oh, wait, they're investing in that. Maybe it's something good going on over there. I want to be a part of that too. And it actually helps build your credibility to show that you're worth investing in the community. So by winning some smaller grants and getting those up to speed and learning that, it also serves to help your team understand the process and learn the process with a little smaller stakes. If you were to jump into a federal grants, the administration, the budgeting, the management, the oversight of those is intense. So I feel like it's better for teams to learn on a smaller scale with smaller risks and smaller intensity, just to learn the terminology, the process, how grants work. Then you can use that to build your muscles and work up to the marathon. And so that's where learning this process and going through this readiness piece will help you start to build that muscle. It's from going from couch potato into running a 5K over a few weeks' time. Then you can take the next step and determine, okay, where should we start looking at first, and determine which categories, which relationships, which strategic partners might be a good place to start with your grant process. And then you can continue building from there.
Avi has a question.
Couch to 5K, here we come. Absolutely.
You seem to be talking mostly or only about applying for and getting the grants. What about the other side of actually implementing whatever work or commitments usually come along with that? In OWASP, it tends to be a lot more complicated because it's not just the organization itself doing it.
Right. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because once a grant is awarded and needs to be implemented, that's when a lot of the work begins. And people don't understand that. So it's good that you are aware of that process. Absolutely. Because that's one piece. If we move into the grant identification stage in the grant search process, that would be a separate phase, but we would be looking at which grants are a good fit with your mission, which grants do you have the capacity to implement, or if you don't, how do we need to build that capacity and work towards that? Because the last thing you want to do is get a check for funding and then not be able to implement what you outlined in the application and what you said, yeah, if you give us this money, here's what we'll do. And then you're scrambling like, oh, great, what have we gotten ourselves into here? You want to make sure you have that capacity ahead of time. So that would be another piece, is looking at it strategically. Who on our team can handle these pieces? If this is awarded, what do we need to get in place? And how can we do that and mobilize quickly in the case that maybe this would help us implement a program, but we can't hire yet until we know we have the program? Sometimes it's kind of that in between stage. So making sure you have a plan in place to have that capacity is definitely an important piece for implementing, because it does require the implementing, but also the reporting, the accountability, making sure you're collecting the data appropriately and collecting the right kind of data to report the way we need to for the grants.
So my follow-on question with that is, sometimes it's just a question of the organization going and doing it. Sometimes it's a question of finding the volunteers to do it. And in our case, very often we'll need to be contracting out to a third party to actually implement that. And the other side of that is actually doing grants, like for us to give a grant to somebody to go ahead and do a thing. Is that something that also is part of this, that you've done both sides of that?
I have helped with both sides of that. And that would be something we'd look at after this initial grant readiness stage is over. But that is certainly something that we can help design and build a framework for. Because again, if you're wanting to administer grants, that's something that you want to make sure you have your ducks in a row, you have your parameters well defined, and that you know what you're doing. You don't want to kind of be a hot mess on the background. You want to be the professional organization that you're conveying, and you want to run it appropriately. So having those systems, the definitions, the clear priorities, having those pieces in place will be important to make sure. And I'm glad you're thinking ahead to that, because that's definitely something we can take into account as we're working through the roadmap process. If that's one of your goals, to be able to administer grants, we want to work that into the framework to make sure that's a piece of the plan and identifying roles and responsibilities for that down the road. Good questions.
So Grant, I think you had your hand up before me.
So Avi kind of stole my question, but I'm gonna take where Avi took it and take it a little further. From our perspective, it might actually make sense to start with that side of it rather than the receiving grant side, because it sounds like, because almost everything we do, our staffing as an organization is volunteers, and a lot of those volunteers work for organizations that do the kind of work that we do or are involved in the workspace that we're involved with. So we could probably get volunteers to do the work through their companies, but that would mean us giving a grant to that company to do the work for us. So before we go out and find a grant, we'd have to first administer a grant to an organization. And maybe that part is earlier in the process for us than it is going to find the money elsewhere. Although obviously we want to find the money to cover that grant at the end of the day.
Sure. That would be a really interesting piece to dig into as we're defining your priorities and identifying your initial core purpose and priorities and vision and core values. That would be something to really define and decide as a team, and go through some exercises to flesh that out and figure out what does that look like and which one of these priorities does need to surface first. Because if you focus, as you know, in too many directions at once, you won't do any of them very well. So that may be something we would need to go through some exercises, maybe even a survey, and talk through some questions there to determine, would that make more sense for you long-term to approach that first and then the grants, or would the other way? So that's certainly something to keep in mind.
Yeah, so this is obviously one of my highest priorities. I will be, as we do the actual discovery side of things, I'm very happy to provide you our grants process for handing grants out. And I think one of the difficulties we've got is that there is a disconnect between our volunteers. We don't have a process to collect pieces of work that are fundable right now, but we have the ability to pay people. And so it's very ad hoc, and almost every single one we've ever done is different. So I'm happy to produce all of the stuff that we've got during the roadmap process. And we can work out if we prioritize the giving before we do the grant writing. But I feel that the biggest gap we've got out of all of these things is getting the income and sorting through some of the administrivia, like conflicts of interest. As Grant mentioned, there are people in our community who are volunteers who also have officer positions. How do we handle that? And things like that. You've probably seen this before. And so we do have transparency requirements as one of our core values. So I think it's really important to make sure that everyone's on board with both elements of giving out grants, being transparent about grant processes, but also how do we go and apply for grants, particularly, say, for example, if someone on the board does a lot of work with the US government and we're applying for a US government grant, we want to leverage those connections, but is that something that we should be doing? That sort of thing.
Right. And I'm hearing throughout this conversation today, a lot of really good key pieces that you have to work with. And then, as you know, there are also some gaps. So that's where this process will help identify what are those good, key, solid foundational rocks that you already have. How can we build on those and fill the gaps? So these are all really good questions to dive into.
Cool. I'm just cognizant of time and what we've got left on our agenda. Is there any final questions for Teresa? Just a quick show of hands, or everyone's okay with me engaging Teresa? Excellent, thank you. Teresa, I'll contact you after the board meeting. The rest of the business is probably not related. You're more than welcome to stay. It's an open board meeting, but if you want, you can drop off.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, appreciate your questions and thoughts on the process, and I welcome your connections and input. So it was great to meet everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for joining
Thanks.
us. Yeah.
Thank
I
you
look forward to getting to know you better.
very much so. Okay, Vandana, the next item of business, I'll share my screen again.
Sure. Thank you.
So the Maribor chapter discussion, is Lisa on the call?
Yes, I'm
I think
here.
I saw her. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Hi, Lisa,
So
over to you.
thank you so much to the Maribor chapter leaders to come to the meeting. I will let Lisa describe this, and one of the problems we've got is that this would have come to the board sooner than later, so I just escalated it straight away. We don't have a lot of options for what's happened, and I don't believe that we need to hit a a small nut with a big sledgehammer. Let's figure out a way forward. So Lisa, can you please go ahead and describe what's happened?
What came to my attention was last year is the creation of another, I guess it's a OWASP association in Slovenia, which is part of the EU. And there is, they filed, and there's a tax ID. They have their own, it's called OWASP Association. So I sent it to you guys and to Andrew, because my understanding is OWASP was a trademark, and signing on behalf of the foundation or representing yourself on behalf of the foundation without approval was not allowed. So I didn't think it met the policies and procedures that we have in place for chapters.
Yep. So Milan or Gregor, can you describe what the association's about and why you decided to actually do this?
Yeah, hello, hi. Thank you for having me. So to explain a little bit, and it's a little bit connected with the topic you discussed earlier about granting. In our case, for example, we have active citizens fund in Slovenia, which are grants by our state to provide communities with some sponsorships if they provide some feedback. Not feedback, but rather active participation and showing some progress, in our case, in cybersecurity. In our case, we created around 70 posts for Facebook, and what we received was around 2,000 euros, which went to the to designers and to content writers. And for this reason, I can also talk, for example, how grants work in Europe. What you discussed earlier is quite different in Europe maybe than in US. Why? Because in European case, you can only have 20 to 30% of the grant outsourced. Everything else must be paid inside organization, for example, for employment or content writing. This is the main reason why we opened this non-profit organization, so we receive this grant, and also for other reason. For example, if you will go to our site, you will see that we organize a lot of events, especially in Slovenia. Also, if you will go to GitHub site, you will see that this year we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events. And for this reason, we usually get some funding from companies, which is not like $1,000 or $5,000, but it's around 100 or 200 euros. Why? Because at least in our case, companies need some bill to provide to some organization. For this reason, also we receive 100 or 200 euros per event, and then we buy pizzas or we buy some beverages. That's basically it, and that's why we opened this non-profit organization. At the end of the year.
Gregory,
Yeah.
I have a question. We are a nonprofit and we have a subsidiary both in the United States and in Europe. So why didn't you contact the board before you used the OWASP name to open another nonprofit?
We looked at the website and there was, for example, fundings, etc., which were quite big. We don't need like 5,000 or 2,000 euros. We need, for example, 400 to 300 to 400 euros to organize the event, to pay for the
yeah,
place.
that's understood.
Yeah.
But you use the OWASP name, which is trademarked, and you opened another organization without permission.
Yeah, this was probably our issue because we wanted to open some non-profit organization, as all the events are related to promoting OWASP. We just opened OWASP non-profit organization, which can be only in Slovenia because it doesn't have a VAT to work abroad. It can work only locally. And yeah, this is probably the issue.
Yeah, it is. It's a big issue.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Gregor, the things you're trying to do, all of those things are well within the foundation's remit, well within what we want to help you to achieve. The events happening in Slovenia, that's OWASP X that Andrew's working hard to create a process for, to make it easier to get the small amounts of money or the amounts of money and the amount of support that you need to run those events. Everything else sounds like the same sort of thing that every chapter around the world does, right? Getting some funding to provide some pizzas or to provide, you don't need to necessarily have a non-profit organization locally to do those things. This is actually why I asked Andrew to bring this to the board, because I don't feel like you guys have tried to do something underhanded here. I don't think you're trying to do anything other than what we as a community are trying to achieve. You're just trying to do it in Slovenia, and you're trying to do it in a way that made sense for you. But there are ways to do this properly. The problem is that it causes problems for the foundation with regards to the European entity that now conflicts with the other European entity. You understand that from a legal point of view, it becomes very fuzzy.
I'd also like to pile on with that and add one more other pile with one other point is the managing of finances. And anytime you have to sign anything like that, which of course has its own chapter policy of how chapters are supposed to manage. And explicitly, chapter leaders are not supposed to be responsible or worried about dealing with these finances. That's like a whole other thing that you don't need on your head.
Yeah, I second what Grant.
Sorry,
Glenn.
I was also wondering how it is indeed with like insurances and all that good stuff when you have your own non-profit organization, right? So what happens if somebody breaks a leg that goes to one of those meetings, or I don't know, it's indeed a lot of hassle that you maybe are not aware of, right? And like the people saying, I think we can really help and guide you and make sure you can sponsor all those events. And there are indeed other chapters also capable of doing it. Because it would be a shame if something happens and then suddenly you are accountable, or your organization, right? So
to underline what both Glenn and Avi have said, we want you to be able to focus on getting the message out. You don't need to worry about the logistics, the legalities of it, because there are concerns around liability that Andrew mentioned earlier today. We've had to increase our liability insurance for the directorship of the board because we are exposed to more potential concerns now, and we don't want volunteers to end up in that same problem without that cover, right? We want to make sure that you are covered, and you shouldn't have to worry about it. You should just be able to do the mission. You should just be able to have the conference and make it happen, send the invoices to the foundation and get them paid, right? It should just be able to work easily. Sorry, Vanana, you got your hand up.
Yeah, okay, great. What about, for example, as we applied for this small grant, how would this work, for example, in this case?
Really quite easily. I mean, if you need to have it through the European Union, we do have a European Union entity. We are in the process of moving it. And so what you could do is just simply, we could provide you the current Belgian entity or the new Netherlands entity once it's created. I believe Tom Pappas, where are we up to with the Netherlands entity?
So we got a proposal that was approved, and we're waiting for the engagement letter to get that going. I guess I would say it this way, the Belgian entity basically hasn't had any activity in 2 years. Is there any way that, this could be run through the US entity? It would be easier from an administrative standpoint.
Probably not, Tom, and that's why Gregor needed a European entity for many reasons.
Had a feeling.
Yeah. But it's okay. I mean, if it's urgent, we can run it through the Belgium entity. That would be a bit of a headache paperwork wise. But how far? Time wise, how far away from the NL entity?
It usually takes a month to 2 to do, but here's the problem: we're about to be in August, and most of Europe is.
Yep. Okay. But sorry, Vanana, you had your hand up. You wanted to.
Yeah, I wanted to understand that when currently they have registered this entity, are they accepting grants in their account, or how is it being managed? I'm sorry if this question has already been discussed. Greg, this question is for you.
We receive grants to this nonprofit organization. For example, as I said earlier, last year, we have, for example, Active Citizens Fund, which support only nonprofit organizations in Slovenia. And we applied for this grant, and if we wanted to get this 2,000 euros, we had to have a nonprofit organization. This was the main reason why we opened this small no-profit organization, which can work only in Slovenia. It doesn't have that ID which is valid inside whole Europe, but it has a VAT ID which is valid only in Slovenia. So 20% of the funds we received at the beginning, and the other 80% of the funds we received at the end of the completion of the project, when we sent all the invoices to this Active Citizens Fund.
Andrew, I think you have your hand up, and then Juben, and then I have a question regarding the grants.
So to a certain degree, I think there's some operational issues that we'll need to work through once the decision is made, but I would like the positive outcome here in terms of making sure that we get the financial transparency we need from our code of conduct, but also I don't think, because it's a related entity at all to us, we don't need to report on it as such in 2021, because we've pretty much closed the books on 2021 some months ago. But I would like the board to concentrate on how do we move forward on this. I personally think there's an element of maybe Milan and Gregor didn't know about the European entity and how to work with it. and we could, substitute future work there, try to work out the transparency the board's looking for operationally after this meeting. But I would like the board to start thinking about what is it that Gregor and Milan are trying to achieve, and how do we enable that for all chapters and not just Maribor? And then I don't want to just keep on going on about this wasn't supposed to happen. It's happened. Let's work out a path forward. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, thank you.
Jubin, over to you.
Hey, Gregor, I just, Andrew, I agree. I don't think there was any malice here. And I agree, we should just move forward. I want to make sure we don't have liabilities that's associated, especially depending on what path forward we pick. We might be consuming the liabilities of this organization into us if we transfer funds and do anything with that. So, Gregor, do you know roughly when this entity was started?
Yeah, definitely. It's just a second.
Just roughly a year. Was it 2020 or 2021?
20th of May 2021.
Okay, and do you know how much income you've had on this entity roughly?
Yeah, I can tell exact numbers. 2,191.31 euros.
Okay, super negligible. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think my question has already been mentioned by Andrew, wherein we want to make sure that we make amends with what has happened, but then we move forward with clear transparency with all the chapters that we have. I know you've created an entity, but then it has to go in a certain direction wherein OWASP is already trademarked, and we don't want to lose a valuable chapter. So we want to make sure that all the things are streamlined. And you also have everything that needs to be there for the management, because we have accounts team, we have tax team, we have finances team, everything is there to support you. Chapters committee to projects committee, everyone is there to support you. So probably that's the way forward. I think Grant has hands up.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it completely there, Vandana. Thank you. The idea, Gregor, here is to make sure the rules around what happened are unfortunately very clear. We as a board don't want to implement those rules because it would be contrary to furthering the mission of the foundation, which you guys are trying to do. So yeah. I'd like to find a way for us to help you do what you need to do in the right way.
Okay, so as I understand, the next step from our side is to close this nonprofit organization, but maybe something to think about also from the grant point of view, as you were discussed earlier. How will you do this in the future? As I said, just to think about, we have Active Citizens Fund, for example, in Slovenia, which can support only non-profit organizations inside Slovenia.
Yeah.
How will you manage this also if you are moving to the grant point of view, for just to think about it?
So generally, non-profits that are being wound up need to disperse their funds to other like non-profits, and it's simple. I think in this case that we could just transfer the funds into our existing accounts in Europe. In terms of being able to do things with this is where I think federated OWASP needs to work, but we're really far away from getting there at the moment. We still haven't really talked to Amnesty or Rotary International to work out a model that could allow federated entities and us to move forward on that. I do think in terms of the winding up, we could use our European folks that Tom's using to help you do the winding up and everything like that. So it shouldn't cost you any money. And we can make sure that the money goes to the OWASP Foundation and therefore you can still access it. In terms of grants, the grants policy is there and you can actually apply for grants and you can also create grants and you can also fund grants. So there's a lot of things that you could do. I think you'll find that it's possible to apply for a grant that is in Slovenia with a European entity as the recipient, because I don't think many organizations have hundreds, well, not 20, not hundreds, 27 different entities just simply to cope with all these different grants. Now, I do know that Lisa had her hand up before, so can we just do it in the order of Lisa, Tom, and Glenn?
Yes, just quick question, suggestion, or something to think about. This has been an ongoing thing that I've noticed. How can we have leaders of chapters ask before they take an action instead of taking the action, so we don't have to be back here later on? I know we have everything on the website. It's just easier, because I know that we find out something's going on after the fact, and we're not approached as a foundation prior to the chapter leader taking the action. And then the other thing is, with moving forward with this particular situation, there's SSRD and another company that's handling or sponsoring or promoting all of these activities for this chapter. So that's kind of a conflict right there that we're going to have to address moving forward, but we can do that at a later date.
Yeah, and those companies are the companies which provide, for example, 200 or 100 euros to support the event. And they also then promote the chapter.
Yeah, but we have different policies around that too that are posted on the website in regards to how to handle that.
Tom? Oh, sorry.
So Andrew, you're right. In the US, that is typical that if you're dissolving a nonprofit in whatever state, your bylaws require you to provide any excess funds to a like not-for-profit. I'm not sure what it is in Slovenia. But it doesn't sound like, in Juban, you asked, I think it's, less than 500 euros. So it's not like it's an exorbitant amount of money. To your point, Andrew, yes, I can ask the people at Crow, who we're using and I've used before. But I suspect I'll need your incorporation documents, Gregor.
Currently, there are now around 3 or 2 euros on the account, so it's not much.
Yeah,
and
so
to close the organization, it's basically no cost in Slovenia.
Okay, so you'd end up, so if you've got very little there, it can either be, given back to whoever gave it to you would probably be the easiest way to go, or just to do some activity and then shut it down. And then we can help you going forward to, to attain the goals you guys are looking for.
Not sure what activity Gregor can do for 3 euros, but
yeah,
that's a thimbleful of some kind of Coca-Cola or something at the next next event.
For next event, yeah.
Just ask the bank to donate it to a charity and close the account, and you're done.
Yeah. Glenn, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I can imagine that some of the countries, they, like Gregory said, they need to be a non-profit in that country itself. I mean, here is clearly, that it's an OWASP non-profit organization that started in Europe, right? It's using the brand, but are there other ways to still facilitate and get grants from the local countries itself? So I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but if Gregory would create a non-profit organization that has a different name, but be able to, I don't know, forward grants or money that came in through that organization to the OWASP organization, for example.
Yeah, definitely. In our case, for example, we will create a different entity. We will not promote OWASP. We will promote just like, I don't know which, none of the organizations, but we will still create security related content. This will be probably at the end of the year, our effort, which we will do, because if we want to organize some events, we don't need, let's say, half a year in advance to tell we'll create that events and everything else. We just pop out an event, say, okay, we need 400 euros. We'll all file everything to you, etc. This will probably be month 2 or 3 that you will grant this, or someone will, let's say, at the end of the day say, okay, we will not grant this event. These are events, let's say, which will happen. For example, next event is in September. We will try to find some sponsors who will support the event at the end of August or the beginning of September. And for this reason, for example, we will, as you mentioned, we will create another non-profit organization which will not support OWASP, but still will promote cybersecurity related content, which we think, and is also our, let's say, path and to pursue something that is security related, like OWASP.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, honestly, I would say it's just an idea. I don't know how viable it is and if it's really worth the hassle. Like some of the members already said, hey, let's also put this with Teresa, the lady we just saw and spoke here talking about grants. I think that would also be a good key factor to take into the conversation with her. As I also have now a bit of this similar issue, another non-profit organization that wants to do things with OWASP has money funds, so there needs to be a way to transfer that in a good, transparent and legal way, of course. But yeah, I would say maybe not yet create one, but we're definitely on it. But yeah, I think we should also put that on the list to discuss with Teresa as well, this type of structures that we can do it in a all correct and legal way.
So my question to Gregor is, how do we as an organization communicate better with chapter leaders that these are our policies and what services we have to support you? Because obviously at some point you decided this was setting up your own organization was easier than working with us. What was missing from our side that would have said, oh, we should have done it this way instead? Is it the chapter committee communicating this on a regular basis? Is it training? Is it what would have helped you not set up an organization?
For example, in our case, basically nothing, because as I said, this funding, this grant was only supporting Slovenian non-profit organizations.
But Gregor,
non-profit organizations located in Slovenia. It's not grant like EU grant, which is 10,000 or 50,000 euros or more. It's just small grant which offers non-profit organizations to support or to communicate with the world some specific topic.
But Gregor, you could have just asked us for the money and we would have given it to you. So what Andrew's asking is, what you wanted to do was to run the event.
No, in this
Why
case
didn't you
was
ask
not
us
to
to help
run
you?
the event. We opened the chapter not to run the event, but to go to this Active Citizens Fund, which was to promote through social media cybersecurity content. If you will go to our Facebook page, you will see that last year we had around 60 posts related to cyber, from password policies to how to create secure application, how to secure your mobile phone, how to delete your mobile footprint, etc.
So, sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
Quick question too, Secure Bank, what is that project?
Secure Bank is open source project, which we built in the time of COVID. It's on GitHub, and we mainly used it for trainings regarding .NET development,
Is it
secure
a,
.NET development. Yeah.
is it an OWASP project? Because Harold doesn't know about it. Harold doesn't know about it.
It's OWASP Pro. We also applied for it, and it's also listed inside the OWASP on OWASP GitHub repository.
Yeah. Oh, I just saw it on your chapter page. Okay.
Yeah, it's also on GitHub repository of OWASP. So
Yeah, but is it in the projects with Harold?
it should be.
I
At
don't,
least just a
not that
second.
unless you spoke with Harold, I don't think he's aware of it.
We can sort that out later. I'm just cognizant of
Yes,
time.
yes.
We've got.
Yep, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. That is actually a good point. Gregor, we'll work with you to make sure it's a properly formed project. If it's not, if it is, great, no worries. So for the board, I'd like you to say what you'd like to do, because what we have to do as a foundation is more or less suspend Gregor and Milan, and I don't think that's what we want. So what would you like to do instead?
Definitely not that.
Yeah, definitely not that. So Andrew, can I so here's what I heard is that there was some money available and Gregor in his chapter wanted to do this, but that, like, they could have asked for that 2,000 euros from us and they could have funded that, or they could have used this grant that was available. And I do think what they did is probably more appropriate for our mission, right? They used local funding to fund what our mission is, but they use specific funding for their own regional environment. and they couldn't do this without starting this foundation. So isn't this why we're doing the whole federated model, is to solve problems like this? It just sounds like Gregor did it faster than we were ready for it. So
agreed.
I personally would like to look at, I know Gregor said dissolving what they have created and creating a new foundation, not using the OWASP branding, but I like to understand how we could get to a place where this is the first. I know we've talked about China and Australia being part of the conversation. Sorry, maybe New Zealand. I don't remember, but maybe Gregor is the first beta tester of this federated model, and how we could accomplish that. Gregor, I personally, and this is a personal opinion, not even a board opinion, but a personal OWASP member, I think you did OWASP a service by this. It just looks weird on paper, personally.
Yeah, I think you're just ahead of where we are in terms of federated entities, and realistically bringing that entity into house, we're not quite ready for it yet. That's the thing. But if it needs to be dissolved by the end of the year, then we've got time to sort that federated stuff out. But we need to sort it out, is what I'm trying to get at. So, well, sorry, go ahead.
While I completely agree with what you've said, Gregor did move the mission forward in a way that we would all consider to be reasonable. We need to make sure that getting money from a government entity isn't easier than getting the money from the foundation. That's it. We need to be better than that. We need to find a way to be better than that. And I think
Grant,
that's part of the problem.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think that it was easier. At least that's not what I heard from Gregor. It's just that I think it was more ethical for Gregor to take local funding to promote local content to yes, I've improved OWASP mission, but I think it was honestly, I think that is more honest way of funding what he was specifically doing, is using local grants for that. That's what we want everyone to do.
Agreed, but Gregor did talk about how it would take months to get the funding from us.
I see, right? Got it. I think
that does play a role.
Yes, also this plays role for example, events. Not regarding this funding. This funding was 6 months to apply, so there would be sufficient amount of time to get your funding from your side. But as Jabari said, yeah, we wanted to use the funds which were available locally, to promote local content.
Okay, so the event thing, Andrew, that's OWASP X, right? And that's something
Yeah.
I know we
We're ready to
haven't
do it now.
moved it as far as we should have. Yeah, we're ready now. So can we run Gregor's event using an OWASP X model? Can he be
Yes.
the first to do that?
Yes.
Gregor, are you prepared to do that, to try and run your event in September as an OWASP X event?
Yeah, we can try. We can go through the process and see how it will go.
It's going to be painful, and you're going to teach us a lot of lessons, and we'll make it better that way, right? Because you're going to be the first.
Well,
Definitely,
actually,
Andrew.
I think it's AppSec New Zealand Day that's actually going to be first, because I think it's happening in late July. But anyway, there's not many before it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We actually have applied for the OSX trademark, which was the last remaining piece of the equation. We've got the contracting, we've got everything in place now.
Okay, great. So for this event, I will contact Andrew, you?
Yeah, start with me, but I'll be putting you on to Lauren. Lauren is away today. She's got a family issue. So please contact me and we'll get you in contact with Lauren, who's our event manager.
Okay. So,
Okay.
and what should we do now? So should we close the nonprofit organization right away, or should we wait?
I think the main
What
thing
the
right now
plan is?
is, can we just have some transparency? If you've done some tax returns, just simply provide that to accounting@owas.com so that we can see that there's transparency. I think that's the main thing for the time being, because there is a discussion to be had amongst the board about our federated stuff. We're not ready to do it right now. I would hate for you to dissolve something that you could do, say, 4 or 5 months from now, and then you have to recreate the thing. So let's just get the transparency we're looking for. And then when we're ready to have a decision made by the board about federated OWASP, we can then work out what's going to happen.
Okay.
So transparency, and probably put the entity on ice and leverage OWASP for all the things you're wanting to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I did actually have the developer summit, and so the project summit and the developer outreach. Now the outreach committee has asked for that to happen in August, which is great. I'd like to probably table Harold's presentation on the project summit, because it's not happening until November, because I want to have time for the potential partnership with Crest. Are there any residual questions for Gabor or for Gregor?
Do we need to officially take a vote to not suspend the chapter and these two individuals to make sure that doesn't happen?
I think chair and vice chair just need to make that call, right? Like it's not. I don't think it's a vote.
Okay. Banana?
Yeah, I am happy to support it for sure. The only thing is that what I feel is that it's a decision where we need to make sure that the chapter keeps running and the chapter actually connects with the staff so that the things can be managed smoothly. If they agree, I'm happy to support and sponsor and happy to be part of it.
Yeah, we definitely agree.
I think we're clear that we're completely aligned with Lana.
Perfect.
Okay. I don't think you need to make a vote, because you've got support from Vandana and Grant, and the reality is votes change the situation rather than, you know, this is more or less an exception, and we've got things we've got to do before we get to the exception part. Okay, so I think we're fine. I'm glad we had the discussion, but I think it is important for us to move on to the executive session.
So, sorry, Andrew, just one more thing, and we need your support operationally for managing the finances of this, and there is overhead for you and Tom to deal with this until we have a discussion on the federated model. So,
yep, that's fine.
I think you're aligned as well.
Yeah, we can take care of that. It's 1 or 2 is not gonna cause a huge issue, especially for the amount of money you're talking.
Don has the question, and then Avi.
This is not about that. I thought you were ending. Any board member who's interested in going to San Francisco, can you please reach out to me so we can talk about booking your flights and hotels and different things. I'm on vacation next week, so, but I will check emails. So if you could just send me an email. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn, for bringing this up. We've shared this email Andrew shared this email with everyone. We would be meeting in person for the first time in San Francisco for a global AppSec event. So I would request all of you to share your details with Dawn about your stay, for how long you will be staying. And second thing is about flights arrangements or train arrangements or anything. You can connect with Dawn and Dawn can help you out. And she will do the arrangement for us. And if anything, anyway, it needs to be done by us, let's have a chat with her offline around that as well.
Yeah, I am aware that Grant wants to organize his own, so we probably just need to put some, some nice limits around what it would cost us versus what it would cost him and things like that.
Yeah, we're flexible on that. I'll work it out with you. It's not to make it difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Avi?
But before I get to what I wanted to say, could I just request Dawn, while you're on vacation, maybe don't check emails. This is not the remit
It's
of the
part
board.
of
I
my
just wanna
DNA. Sorry, I just
I
can't help
know. I
it.
just want to encourage you to actually take real vacation.
It's
Not
a
my remit.
staycation. It's okay. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
What I was going to say, actually, before we go to executive session, if we can get a quick update on the events. Do we have time for that?
Kelly, is Kelly online?
I'm here, yes. So the APAC event is struggling with registrations, very low. San Francisco's they're on track. And we should have more numbers. I have a call with Tom next week to review the EU event, and we should have those numbers, I'm hoping, by the next board call. But any help, if you guys can help with getting the word out about the APAC event, that would be helpful. We do have 2 social media days planned, August 2nd and August 16th. So like we've done with our other past virtual events, we ask the community to help, and we'll send graphics out. There'll be a reminder going out the Monday, August 1st, Monday, just reminding everybody of the social media day. So yeah, if you see any social media posts, please retweet them, share them, any emails, or if you're talking to anybody, please definitely mention the APAC event.
Right.
But like I think this goes fine. Yes.
Sorry, I was going to ask, and sponsorship, how's that going for the events, especially the in-person ones?
APAC is okay. San Francisco that's in my report, the number, and that was just as of yesterday. Andrew, yeah.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up.
And that, like I said, that was just yesterday afternoon. If you just go down to San Francisco.
Just trying to find it.
Keep going. APAC, San Fran, there we go. So sponsorships, we budgeted 275,000, we're at 290, and then there's an additional 160,000 out in contracts sent.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're ahead of plan. Very nice.
Ahead of plan, yes.
What we
right
need is a lot of people to turn up. So please.
Yeah, right now we only have 21 people registered, but it is still early for November. We've had 25 submissions for the call for trainers, and 162 people submitted call for papers. So that just closed on Friday. I am trying to work with the OWASP event team to see if anybody could replace Martin he was kind of like I want to say, like, once the submissions were all done, then he kind of like took the team and led them. Lauren and I do not have the technical background, so picking talks and deciding which one is more similar, like, we just can't do that. We don't have the ability to do that. So Martin is unable to do that for San Francisco. So I'm trying to get one of the other volunteers that's on the event team to step up. So fingers crossed. If not, if any board member wants to jump in there and kind of lead the call for papers, that would be great, and call for trainers with selecting once they're all scored.
Oh, thanks, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, just to back up Kelly on that.
I hope you don't regret saying that, Glenn.
Kelly,
I
I
have-
noticed that you already have a one keynote speaker booked.
For San Francisco, yes, I've got Charlie Miller's already booked. Jason Roos has agreed verbally, but he has the keynote agreement. He hasn't signed anything yet. I reached out to Rinky Sethi, I think her name is, or well, I think that's how you pronounce it, and also Anina Westala. Yeah,
Twitter.
Jim Manico has been helping me try to get some female keynote speakers. So, yeah, he's got
I
to.
have a few days for that.
Yeah.
Kelly, are you selecting that, or is the content committee selecting the speakers?
The content selection is for the main tracks. The keynotes are us.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I just want to point out, I mean, nothing against Charlie Miller, but he was the keynote speaker a few years ago in Rome. What was that, 2018? So that's 5 years ago, I think. 17.
Yeah, he's really good though, and I agree. We should be trying to get more voices from time to time, but Charlie is a good draw. I like his sessions.
I will make no comment publicly recorded.
Yeah, but I am trying to be, conscious, Avi, of getting new keynotes. I have to say the trainings, even though we ask for new trainers and new topics, it's the same people who submit multiple trainings that have been submitted multiple times for, I don't know how many past events. So.
I don't think the training is as critical as the talks and the keynote speakers. So that's my opinion.
Well, training, I mean,
Training.
some revenue does come in for that. So it's kind of like,
Right.
if you
I know.
offer 6,000 times, no, eventually everybody's going to take that training and nothing's going to be new. So,
yep.
But yeah, there's repeat offenders like that who, like I said, submit 5 and 6 trainings.
I'm just cognizant of time. It's 11:30, and
Sorry.
is there anything else? Dawn, you've got your hand
Yeah,
up.
just one quick thing. I still have Black Hat tickets left. I have reached out to a ton of people, all the members locally. So anyone knows who's an OWASP member, I still have full passes left. You just have to volunteer at our table, and I have a whole bunch of expo passes left. So anyone knows anyone who's interested, just let me know.
So if
Thank
you're
you.
in town,
Don, Mike.
go for it. Sorry.
Sorry, Don. I think my co-chapter leader is interested, and I think I dropped the ball when he asked me to ask you. I apologize. I'll connect you to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if you're an OWASP member and you're going to be in town for DEF CON or B-sides, give Dawn a shot. She'll hook you up for Black Hat.
How many Black Hat tickets do we have?
I have two, I believe I have 2 full, and I think I have 6 expo passes.
Okay.
This is the first year ever that I have any left. So I think it maybe me and Grant were talking earlier, little leftover COVID stuff. I don't really know. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Vandana, do you want to adjourn the meeting?
Just one second. Just I don't know if I can see Tom's just come back on. Tom, do we need to go to executive session for this, or from your perspective, are you happy to talk about this in a public forum? Obviously, the board needs to agree to that as well. But
personally, I'm happy to talk about it in a public forum. There may be some financial conversations we want to reserve for the executive session, but I defer to Andrew.
The board asked for an executive session, but I will defer to the board.
I think if it's about financials, what we can do is we can actually move to executive meeting if everyone is okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
We can adjourn this.
Can we still vote if there's an executive session?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, Lena, so team apologies. I'm in Turkey actually with my family, my extended family, and today's our last night, so I do have to drop. But I really wanted to join the executive session. Are you guys going to record that and privately share it with OWASP board internal?
Yeah, I can do that for you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah. So just to let people know, this is a properly formed executive session. There's a 7 days notice, and we can do votes there as long as there's quorum, and the outcomes can be publicly minuted at the board's approval.
And we will still retain quorum after
Yep.
Jim drops. So we are good.
Okie dokie.
Perfect.
So everyone, thank you so much for attending. Vandana, would you like to do the honors of finding out who wants to break the meeting up?
Sure. So thank you so much everyone for joining us today, and it's an adjourn for the meeting, and we will be meeting next month. I'm sponsoring. Who loves to second it?
Also,
I'll second.
Yes.
Sorry, who was that?
everyone.
Everyone. Okay.
Okay, Andrew, I'm going to stop the recording.